Well, welcome everyone. I'm really pleased to have with me a dear old friend, Markos Kampanis, who was, I would consider, one of the leading painters in Greece. Markos, we first met, was it at Mount Athos?
Oh, yes. Mount Athos.
1986, or was it earlier?
It's something 95, 96. You were there at the Iviron Monastery.
At Iviron, that's right, yeah. My apologies for the rather modern visage that Markos has. Something's gone wrong with his camera. I jokingly said it.
I'm sorry on my part as well. There's nothing I can do for the moment.
No, but it's very interesting. It makes you look very, very modern, like an Andy Warhol print, but a moving one. So if our listeners and viewers can put up with a slightly low quality of sound, but Markos is such a great artist. I really wanted him to share his life and his works with us. I'll just give a little introduction to Markos. He was born in 1955 in Athens, but he studied art in London and actually lived in London until about 1980. He has an enormous oeuvre. I mean, he does liturgical art, frescoes and icons, but he's particularly known for his painting and also his printmaking. He's been strongly connected to Mount Athos for a long time and has arranged exhibitions of work there. Prince, he will tell us more about those. And at the moment, he's got a massive retrospective exhibition, which initially was at the National Library in Athens, but he had that same exhibition open just a few days ago in Thessaloniki. So that covers the last 30 years of his work. So I very much encourage you to look at his website, Markos Kampanis. I will put up a link to that. So welcome, Markos. It's a joy to have this time with you.
Thank you, John. And thank you very much.
Good. We were just chatting a bit before we went live, and what's fascinated me about your work, and you're going to be showing some examples of your work, is how all of your work has a sort of numinous quality about it. Even if you do a tree or a still life, it seems to have the same quality one finds in icons, where, as it were, you're not just depicting the outward visible element, but there seems to be an inner spiritual quality to it. And so, sometimes, I was just looking at your tree exhibition a few minutes ago, some of the trees I can see influenced by Byzantine mosaics, but it's not to say you're just sort of cutting and pasting from Byzantine work. It's to say you're inside that way of seeing the world. So I find there's nothing artificial about your work. It's a lot of modern art, I find, can be quite aggressive and feed on negativity. And its power is from the negativity, but I find your work is powerful from its affirmative, positive element. So can you just tell us a bit about, well, just about yourself first, and let's just start with what you're trying to communicate in your gallery work. I'd like to concentrate primarily on your let's call it gallery work as distinct from your iconographic work.
Well, I don't know if it is so much different. I mean, what I'm trying is to walk between the two, between, let's say, actual, painting or printmaking and religious art. What I'm trying, I think many artists have tried, I don't think that I have succeeded anyhow, is to join this as one language, as one visual language, and not have, differences between painting a still life and painting, a religious theme. And sometimes this is helpful when you try and concentrate on similar subjects. For example, there are details in icons which are still lives, really, or landscapes. So how do you move from that to an actual still life, or the other way around? I'm trying to do that. I don't know if I have succeeded or not, but I think it's something that helped me is the fact, which may sound curious to some, that I have never studied icon painting. I have never been, a student of an icon painter. I have only studied painting, and what I learned what I learned about religious painting was through my own painting, not through following, an expert in icon painting.
That's interesting. That would explain quite a lot. As a convert to the Orthodox Church,
An apprentice, someone doing murals, but I had already, let's say, established myself as a painter.
Mm. Yeah, that's very interesting. I do feel that in terms of the revival of iconography, at least in the West, outside of Orthodox countries, there is an understandable but regrettable two-world approach. You've got your secular art and you've got the special other universe of icon art. And I just hope that with time, we can reach that sort of maturity that you have, being raised in the faith. You don't sort of suddenly switch over. Now I'm doing liturgical art, so I'm going to paint in a different way. Now I'm doing gallery art, I'm going to paint a different way. Because you see the same way, you're painting in a similar way. And I've noticed this with mosaics in Sicily, for example. You've got your church mosaics, but then when the mosaicists did decoration for the palace, so a secular work, exactly the same style. They didn't sort of change to a different style. They saw the same way, so they made mosaics the same way.
Yeah. Actually, I've been working the last few days because on Monday I'm giving a talk in a small seminar about almost this issue that you are saying now. It's a talk about whether we can say that there is, let's say, a holy style or not, a religious style or not. And as you said about the mosaics in Sicily or in any other, let's say, example, in the past, there was no difference between secular painting and religious painting regarding style.
Yes.
And I don't think that faces, let's say, of holy persons are painted in this way because they are holy. I think they were painted in such a way because then, at that time, people painted, artists painted people that way, regardless if they were saint or not. And there are many, many examples. You can see examples of Christ or of a saint which are exactly painted the same way as they painted an ancient Greek person, Hippocrates, for example, or Alexander the Great.
Yes, but I think one could say that that culture was a lot more theocentric than our culture is now. And therefore, though the individual might not be a holy saint, they were sort of carried along by that theocentric culture. So in that sense, the form of their art and architecture was informed by the holiness of that culture. Not that Byzantium was all pure and perfect, of course, but we live in a very different age, which is profoundly secular. So if I just sort of went with the flow of things, living in a secular way, then I think a lot of rubbish would enter into my church work. So I do agree with you in one way, but I think also there is an effect of our theological worldview, our spiritual view, and the way that we would depict an apple or a chair, surely. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree? Do you think that?
No, I agree, and I think another reason was that in previous centuries, society was much more, what's the English word, coherent. There was one direction, and artists of the secular, let's say, kind or the religious kind shared the same way of seeing things. And there was only one style at each period in secular painting. Nowadays, we have 150, let's say, I don't know, 1,000 ways of depicting secular life. Okay, so it's a bit difficult to choose if one had to one style and related to religious painting. Today we have from I don't know straightforward naturalistic painting to conceptual art, while that did not happen, let's say, 2 centuries ago.
So how do you think an artist in our own age can have a certain authenticity and not sort of be confused or misled by all these different arts? I mean, you're walked a pretty strong path, and there's an authenticity to your work. I mean, how personally have you kept that vision pure, not rejecting every single form of art because it's not an icon, on the other hand, not being swept away with every latest fad? I mean, what's been your secret, if I may put it that way?
I don't know if it's a secret or not, but the same thing as suppose one didn't do any religious painting, you would still have the problem, let's say, of either trying to be influenced by everything that happens in the realm of secular painting, or following your own, let's say, well, perhaps not a vision, but your own heart
Yes.
towards seeing things. I don't think that I reject really any kind of modern movement, as long as this might help my way of seeing things. I mean, I work from straightforward drawing or egg tempera to Photoshop images. But I think it's not a matter of style, it's a matter of ethos.
Yeah.
Rather than what style you follow. I want to be true.
I was just talking to my apprentice Mark yesterday how I'm always trying to find ways to re-regard the world as a child would, not as childishness, but in a childlike way, to preserve the wonder of things, and sometimes exposing myself to a form of art or a form of reading that I wouldn't normally. So it makes me see things differently, so I don't get into a rut. And I've noticed with your work, it's always something fresh and renewing. You're always, you're not repeating a pattern. So I suppose your openness to different art forms keeps you alive, as it were.
I don't try. So there are certain artists that follow, let's say, a particular line, a particular vision, and they have acquired a certain style. And then I think I would differentiate 2 different approaches. One is painting on the same style and with the same vision, with truthfulness, with ethos, with sincerity, and the other way is just copying what you've done before. You can see painters. I cannot see that, for example, Francis Bacon is copying himself. It doesn't happen, I think. There are other painters that copy themselves. I don't think Giorgio Morandi, for example, with his still lives, is copying himself. He's got something that every new painting, although it's exactly the same as the one before, or almost the same, gives you the impression that it's freshly made for the first time. It's not, and that's. And generally, in my life, I think I'm a bit adventurous in life and in painting. So if the circumstances come and I want to paint something completely different, I do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
Perhaps, Markos, you could show our viewers some of your work. If you could go into screen share so that we know what you're speaking.
Where shall we start? Shall we? For example, I started painting from a very young age. Okay, my first painting was when I was 13. Okay, I mean painting, an actual painting. oil on wood, about 1.5 meters long. Okay. I have it somewhere here. I might find it, which is probably the first painting that I have on record. And I have been painting in that way for a great number of years till I came to England. England was the time when I, let's say, started looking in Byzantium.
And which art school were you at?
At St. Martin's.
St. Martin's.
Yes. And the reason that I was attracted to Byzantine painting was painting qualities in Byzantium. There was nothing to do with faith or anything else. I liked this kind of painting. In the same way as, let's take an example of England, I don't know, the Bloomsbury group painters had a special relation to Byzantine aesthetics, which themselves they said. I don't know, Gustav Klimt, for example, was fascinated and was influenced by the Ravenna mosaics.
Yes, yes.
He had nothing to do with the faith of Ravenna. So the first issue was this love of this kind of painting. So I started looking at it, and then I decided to visit Mount Athos when I came back to Greece, because I wanted to see most of what I have seen in books or heard about in reality. That's the main reason I went there on the first time. Of course, this changed gradually. You know, I got to know the environment there, become friends with certain monks, and the relationship developed. But that was, I think that was the way that Byzantium came into my life.
Fascinating.
So let's try and find.
Here we are. It's coming up now.
That's the first painting I did in 1960.
Here we are. Yeah, we can see that now.
Very, very chaotic and you know, warlike.
Yes. And how old were you then? 13, did you say?
Yes.
13. Yeah. And it's a big one, you say?
It's a big one. It's about 1.5 meters or something. Portrait when I was young. Can you see that now?
Yeah, I can see that, yes. So how old were you when you did this one?
Well, no, 17, 16, something like that.
Right.
Then I started moving to, you know, it's strange that when I went to St. Martin's, I was doing more or less figurative work, not abstract. And then the majority of students and the whole school at St. Martin's was very abstract oriented. But, you know, this difference of styles has to do with what we said before about issues. For example, the principal at that time, Freddie Gore, who is the son of Spencer Gore, although he was, let's say, straightforward landscape painter, you know, taking his easels outside in the open, he managed to deal with painters that were splashing, you know, color on the canvas.
Yes. Have you got any images to show us of your time at St. Martin's?
At St. Martin's, well, painting at St. Martin's.
And then perhaps we can jump to some of your recent work.
Yes. Then I started doing quite straightforward interiors and landscape paintings, like, for example, this work I have done at St. Martin's.
Mm.
Okay. This is, and then I went on to paintings like this one, or like this one, which the reason I'm showing is that they from then, as early as that time, I tried to combine seemingly different things. On this part here, we'll find a Greek shadow theater play, and on the left-hand side there, these are English soldiers.
Right.
Okay, and all this part on the left-hand side is from Portobello Road. That was my, this one again is, it has to do with the act of painting. You have the table with the colors, the materials, and then you have on the left-hand side a hanging painting, which is a folk art, folk Greek painting, okay? And then the floor, which is something of a Renaissance thing. Right. So I like this kind of combinations.
I suppose coming from Greece, which was then still quite traditional to England, as St. Martin's, where it's all sort of breaking new ground. You're in yourself. You're combining those two worlds of the older and the new, and I can sort of see you trying to be a link between those two very early on.
And perhaps the reason that I started looking at traditional Greek things or Byzantine when I was in England was the fact that I was looking back to where I came from.
I've been really interested, though, in how basically all the modern abstract founders, like Brancusi, the founder of abstract sculpture, Kandinsky of abstract modern painting, etc., all came from Orthodox roots. So I think there's a certain stylistic, but also zeitgeist that comes from Orthodoxy, where you're, as an artist, depicting not just the outer, but you're abstracting, drawing out the inner fire, the inner logoi of things. So I'm interested in this correlation between the ancient modernity of true Byzantine art and modern art, which is, in a sense, just rediscovered what had always been there in Byzantine art. And Roger Fry, of course, the great critic, he actually called a lot of the early modernism neo-Byzantine for that very reason.
Yes, yes.
Good. Show us some more work.
Yes. Before we move to religious paintings, let's say, or to Mount Athos, what you said before was can be seen in paintings like this one. These 5 paintings in a row. There's a pentaptych, as we say. And it's really the history of art through trees. All trees depicted here come from actual paintings from the history of art. They are not mine. What I have done, I have redrawn them, translated themselves, the images of trees to my own style. And so the first one was ancient Greece, the second is Byzantium, then Renaissance, modern art, and the Far East, let's say, and similarities, let's say, between these traditions that we tend to consider them as opposing or even hostile to each other.
That's so interesting because I think if one assimilates the best of different cultural art and it becomes part of you, like when we eat food, we can eat food from different cultures, but because we're digested, it becomes part of us. So we're not a mixture of Greek, Indian, Indonesian food. It's all integrated into us. So that's a very strong visual expression of you integrating
another painting, let's say, which is really 6 paintings made into one. And there are trees from different cultures and backgrounds trying to find ways that are or elements that are common. This is Greek. This one is Botticelli. This is Byzantine. this is Byzantine, this is ancient Greek, and this is Gustav Klimt.
Mm.
It's the way I see things. It's not that, I'm putting up a theory or whatever.
And when did you do these, Markos?
These were 2011, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing this, not in the flesh, unfortunately, but seeing this advertised.
And these are all, it's a series of paintings that have to do with art history, really. They're not trees from nature.
Okay.
Up to then, I used to do a lot of trees and nature from in situ, from the actual landscape. An example is this one, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Or this one.
Mm.
And then at the point, I moved, let's say, to a bit more conceptual, if you want, approach, having to do with art history more than natural vision.
But you can see an abstract quality even in those ones, sort of representational in one way, but there's an abstract quality to them.
Then we've talked about Mount Athos. Mount Athos, the first time, actually, the retrospective exhibition you mentioned has a subtitle 1990 to 2020. So it's 30 years of work. And now it starts in 1990 because it's the first year I visited Mount Athos.
Oh, right.
And I consider that moment quite important in my career and life. So I could not have a retrospective exhibition without starting from there. Although I used to paint years before, I started the show from 1990. Now,
and why was it important for you? What change did it bring about in you?
Mount Athos.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to talk very much about spiritual things, but in terms of painting, let's say, I came across murals and icons, generally painting, that to my eyes were amazing in style, and I understood a saying, a motto, let's say, that a Greek important painter has said about Byzantium, which I like very much. I have even made 2 books about him, who is Spiros Papaloukas. Papaloukas is a major Greek painter, died in the 1950s, but he went to Mount Athos to study Byzantium for one basic reason, because he believed that all problems posed by the modern movement, you can find solutions in Byzantium. He did not try, like Kondoglu, to revive the past. He used the past to answer today's problems. So that really helped me, yes. Then I got to know a very big tradition of Mount Athos printmaking, something that not many people know about, and that led me to do my own prints of Athos, for example. And at the same time, I did paintings or drawings of the Athonite landscape, okay, like things like that.
Show us some of those.
Things like that. Okay. Which are straightforward landscape paintings, okay, of Mount Athos. And at the same time, because I was painting there were certain monasteries or monks that started giving me commissions to do work for them. Were not always religious, not always church work, but let's say depictions of Mount Athos that were used in monasteries or in office buildings in Athos. The last one I did was this one, which is a whole panorama of Athos, looking a bit like a map. And I find that some of the way it could, one could say that it has elements of Byzantine painting, okay? The mountain here and landscapes and that are very similar to what I did in landscape secular painting. And I like this combination.
Yes. Did Father Vasilius, the retired abbot of Aveyron, did he have a big influence on you?
Yes, I think he did, because he is one of the few, let's say, monks on Athos that knows about painting, and we can talk on the same level, let's say. And it was very important what he said. He gave me a commission, a big commission, which is still not finished, years now, to do the frescoes, the murals, in dependency of Aveyron, which is in the village of Soufli on northern Greece, which is the church of Panagia Portaitissa.
Iconographically, yes.
Our Lady of the Gate. And let's say, not the order, his wish was that, you know, I want you, Markos, to do something which will fall within the Byzantine tradition. Okay, I don't want something extremely extravagant or modern. I want something within that tradition. But at the same time, when I go in the church, I want to say, this is Markos. The moment I walk in, I want to see that. So that was a very liberating, let's say, direction that he gave me, and that's the only thing he asked for. I'll show you some painting from Cornofolia later on.
Just for viewers, my own background is intertwined very much with Aveyron and Father Vasilius, which is why I asked about him. I lived as a hermit for about 7 years in Britain, up on the hills, but before going there, my Archbishop asked me to go to Mount Athos to get experience in a more established monastery. So I went to Aveyron, and I was there about 1.5 years full-time, as it were. And then every year when I was living at the Hermitage, I'd go back for about a month a year. So I've had about 2 years altogether at Aveyron, and I was very much influenced by Father Vasilius. And as Markos, you said, a very unusual monk, you know, very, very deeply, obviously, entrenched in the spiritual life there, but someone who has an understanding of and empathy with art and architecture. In fact, he told me that before he studied theology, before he became a monk, he was interested in architecture. So he has a wonderfully refreshing, non-dualistic approach, I would say. So
now, the last few years, now he has become much older with time, of course, and it's he gets easily tired. It's much more difficult to see him, you know, for a long period of time. But in the last conversation we had was about filmmaking. He's a fan of Akira Kurosawa. He has seen all his films and he's got all his DVDs. So this kind of approach was something that you know, interested me. Other things from Mount Athos was, for example, that's a panorama again, like the one you saw before about Mount Athos from Carriès.
Yes.
And lately I have done the murals in the entrance of Vatopedi Monastery. which again is not religious. What they wanted there was, let's say, a visual introduction to the monastery for pilgrims.
Right.
I should do something about the history of the monastery in a visual way that someone could look at. And so what I did was a number of murals, two of which you can see here. This is a very big one, which is all the monastery, with the dependencies around it.
Yes. And what medium did you use for that, out of interest?
This was the first time I used silicate paints.
Oh, it's great that. I use silica paint all the time now for wall paintings. It's really good, isn't it?
Well, I have to talk about that because I have some unsolved issues. So at some point we shall talk. And that's again from Vatopedi Monastery, from the entrance.
Yeah, lovely. I'm interested in the whole concept of what I call threshold art. In other words, art that isn't liturgical, it's not meant for veneration. On the other hand, it's been inspired and influenced by the vision of the liturgy. And it's on the threshold. It's sort of in the world and in the church at the same time, has a foot in both. And these physically are, as it were, on the threshold of the church and the world. But I think there are artists who exhibit in the world who are threshold artists in that respect.
Even this painting I showed before about all Mount Athos, you know, I don't see there is a difference in execution or in style between Virgin Mary and the angels on top and the landscape underneath.
Yeah.
It's the same hand, let's say, the same person doing it, and I quite like that. One commission that was very helpful to me was when I was asked to do a series of murals, which are portable murals, really. I mean, portable in the sense that because I could not go there, they were done on big wall panels with an actual mortar, and they were screwed on the wall next to each other to form something like a mural, which was done in Mount Sinai, in St. Catherine.
I've seen those, yes. I was at Sinai about 2 years ago and saw them.
So things like that. Sorry, that's not from Sinai. That's from Iconographically. This from Sinai.
Right.
If
you go back, could you go back, Markos, to the one before? Recognize that. The first one you showed. No, the first one that wasn't Sinai.
I'll tell you about that because some of them was influenced by your own.
I was going to say.
Oh yes, yes.
I recognized it from the carving you did for the portrait.
Quite nice because you had on the same monastery a history of me doing these murals. You having done the wooden how do you say the wooden
casing
screen, let's say, for Titus icon. And then on the other side, you had folk images of 19th century about the same subject. And I wanted all of these to combine into one unit, let's say, into one. And the painting you said about is
yes, yeah. Just to background, when I was at Mount Athos, for viewers, I was commissioned by the abbot to make a big oak casing for the portaitis, or the portaitis, so it's like the Queen of Athos. Other icons are allowed to leave Athos as a blessing, to be brought back again, but the portaitis never leaves. She's like the gatekeeper, not just of the Vera monastery, but of the whole of Athos. So down below, I did 4 carvings as part of this large case. It's a very large icon.
I don't have the photograph.
And scenes of the life of the icon, and this is inspired in part by those.
Yes, it is. But then I leave myself, let's say, free to bring into the painting not a copy of something, but the memory of things that I have, for example, from your own carving, or the trees, the buildings here on the right, which are very much influenced by trees by Braque.
Yes, you can see that.
or the one here on the left-hand side, which is from a manuscript, or the still life here in the middle, which is like my own still lives. But I was trying to combine them together in a way that it would not be what we call a pastiche of things, to have a style of unit.
I've always found that that's both the challenge and the blessing of postmodernism, that the blessing is that we have access to just about everything under the sun that's been made in every culture at any time. The struggle of that is not for it to be turned into a pastiche, but to, as it were, assimilate all the best of that in what we do. So what we do, like the work you just showed us, it's a single work that has its integrity. But as you explain it, it actually synthesized many disparate elements, but combined them together.
That's an example which I did not have on the initial file, but I will find it. I think it's quite useful to see. Is it's this painting, okay, still from trees, okay. What I'm trying to do here is to put in practice, let's say, a belief I have, well, not I have, many people do, I mean, it's not my own theory, that sometimes we move from one painting to the next, not because of ideas or because of what we think, but because we paint. We paint something, and at the moment we are painting, a new idea springs up. You don't think about it before, always. And small changes can move from one century to another in a way which is unexpected. For example, here this is a kind of theory which the very famous Byzantinologist in England, Robin Cormack, looked at it and loved it because he said you are doing art history by painting means and not by words. So on the left, let's say, with my own style of an ancient Greek vase, okay, what we call a black figure vase with a red background. Then on the same image, if I added some shadows on the branches, you get the second other, which is a more realistic tree, let's say. Okay. Then if I change the red color into a yellow, immediately that reminds us of Byzantium.
Of the what? Well,
that reminds us of Byzantium.
Byzantium, okay.
Because it's yellow. That's the only difference, really. And if you compare it with the one at the middle here, to the right, is a natural Byzantine tree. It's not, and then going towards the left, you move into a Persian miniature. It's very much like that, only by omitting or adding a few things. If you take this Persian image and go down to the left-hand side, it's a modern painting by Deren. And if I turn that into a tree by adding a background, let's say, all around it, okay, that's very much the last one, right, which is an ancient Egyptian mural. So I'm with all this, let's say, relationship of cultures.
Yeah, that's the power of iteration, isn't it? That's the way nature works, just little iterations, little mutations, little adaptations. And over the centuries or millions of years, you have something that's related to it, but different. So that's a wonderful example of gradual iteration changes.
So what, shall we go, before going to see, perhaps if you want, murals from Cornofolia, another part which was formed a great part of the exhibition I had, that we talked about, because as you can see from my painting, I move from one style or theme to another without very much difficulty. Perhaps one would say, yes, he moves from one to the other a bit superficially. I don't know, but that's how I am. And I compare times to the kind of music I hear.
Mm-hmm.
I move from, at the same day, at the same hour, from a Greek folk to Maria Callas, and from a Byzantine chant to Indian tabla, without facing any problem at all. And that kind of situation was at some point in the center of my thoughts. And what I decided to do is to paint a series of paintings, which I call 365, which is it's a project where I paint one painting exactly the same size every day for the length of a year. So I have 365 paintings. The image as it was in the exhibition was this one. It's almost like an installation, okay, paintings. And what I did was I left myself completely free to do whatever I like, in whatever style and in whatever subject matter, following the motto of Apologise, the ancient Greek painter, not a day without a line. Trying to see whether all these different things, from landscapes to still lifes and from digital prints to charcoal drawings, have a kind of linking something, you know.
And looking back over the work, in retrospect, did you find that there were common threads throughout?
Yes, yes. And people,
how would you describe those?
Sometimes when you judge your own paintings, it's difficult to see, but almost everybody else says it's absolutely clear that no one else could have done all this but Markos, although they're different in between themselves.
I think one thing I noticed about your work is a certain way you handle things. You don't like really hard, crisp edges. There's a sort of fuzzy edge to things that, it's difficult to put your finger on it, but there's a trademark certainly in your work.
Some of them in a larger, these ones. Okay, whatever came, it's like doing a confession or a psychoanalysis. You go and say something, and that's it. You cannot change it because you've said it. So I painted one painting a day, regardless. Some were drawings like this one, other finished paintings, some are photographs. Okay, but what I did by the end of the day, that was it. I never came back to it, never.
I'd like to introduce you to a fantastic painter friend of mine in New Zealand called Michael Shepherd. There's certainly a love of materials. I was just looking at your website and your introduction, how, if I can read it out, his great, almost fetishistic interest in materials and techniques works alongside his academic interest for the history of art that led into editing books and curating exhibitions. You do have a love for materials and techniques, don't you? My friend Michael Shepherd is like that. In fact, he studied conservation and artistic techniques from the 16th, 17th century Dutch painters, and that's influenced his work. It's very modern. It's not in any way an imitation of Dutch work, but you can feel the great honor and respect that he has for materials.
Yes, yes. Although this has led. Okay, I am like that. I try and use all sorts of materials, which perhaps does not help me to go to any particular material in depth. Okay, I realize that, but that's me, you know.
You're a specialist in generalization, specialist in breadth. Marcus, we have about 5 or 10 minutes. So if you could just lead us through what you would like to conclude with.
I'll show you one or two photographs only of the cordofolia.
Yeah.
Which
and what medium are these painted in?
These are with casing paints.
Casing paint, okay.
Casing paints.
And this is a work still in progress, you're saying?
There are certain walls that we have not managed to complete, but hopefully they shall be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, only a Markos Kampanis could have done that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly a Markos work. The colours are gentle, which I like, especially for wall paintings. You don't want colours to jump out at you. It's a unity, and a simple
I'm trying to do that, yes.
piety colours. None of them shout. If I may say, I can see the conjugal influence in the face there.
Well, I think you have to be very, very, very special to do your own Pantocrator that has no connotation from the past.
Yes, of course.
Possibly. Now,
it's interesting, going back to what you were saying earlier about you don't see a big difference between your worldview and how you approach painting an icon or fresco for liturgical use from your painting done for galleries. I actually feel with Fotis Contoglou that his best icons are actually not his icons, they're his portraits, because he's not trying too hard to do religious work. I think they're much more iconographic than a lot of his icons, where he's sort of putting on a religious style. I find them a bit harsh sometimes, whereas the little panel frescoes, some of them are just paintings of people, like this famous one of a priest friend. I find that actually those more authentically iconographic, because they come out of his own vision in full faith. I don't know if you agree or not.
A series of frescoes for the municipality of Athens, which is, let's say, the history of Greece or whatever, and the figures he has there, ancient Greek heroes or whatever, are very Byzantine, let's say, in inverted commas, but they have a much greater authenticity, I think, and truth than some of his, straightforward religious painting.
Yes, I agree.
This is, I have to zoom in. This is the whole life of Virgin Mary Portaitis icon story. Okay.
And these are where? Are these wall paintings that are there?
Wall painting in Cornofolia.
Oh, Cornofolia.
It's the history of the icon. Okay. It's a bit like.
Recognize some of the wood carving there.
Yes, like I don't know, an illustrated manuscript or whatever.
Okay. That's great. There's a certain playfulness, isn't there? I've noticed this with illuminated manuscripts and scenes in the life of saints around real icons. There's a playfulness, the way that you've got to pack a lot of into a small space. It's like a child would draw as they experience things, rather than as I necessarily see them with your eyes, and this has that quality.
Yes, because I am influenced, by illustrated manuscripts a lot, and I have done quite a lot of book illustrations, let's say, which are mostly religious, but you can see them here. For example, this is from the life of Simon, from the from Simon Monastery, okay, which are very much influenced by illustrated manuscripts, or then something which is in between painting and printmaking, a series of saints, which are done for the Synaxaristes, the new book about the lives of saints.
Yes. Is that the one put up by Simona Petra?
Sorry?
Is that the Simona Petra Synaxarion?
Yes.
And Maximus the Greek, you can always tell him by the enormous beard.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Peter of Athos. Yeah. Is that a woodcut or a liner cut?
No, it's not a woodcut. That's what I'm saying. It's what we call, you probably know it, a scratch drawing.
Oh, sketchboard. Yes, that's right. Sketchboard. Yes.
It's only done in 2 colors. So it's an actual icon. I mean, it's not one off.
Marcus, we better begin to close up now. We could go forever. I just love all this work, and I really encourage all our viewers to look at his website, which has just about all your work. It's a very large website, isn't it? It's beautifully laid out, simply, but it's got about all your work on it.
I'm trying to put my newest things in, but that needs time, and I don't always have it. Because I'm preparing for another exhibition in January now.
Really? And where will that be?
Completely different. I don't have examples here now. It's paintings that have been, let's say, influenced or whatever. I mean, the initial idea. It's an illustration in a way of Homer's Odyssey.
Oh, okay.
It's about the Odyssey. No people, no actual facts. It's almost abstract work that has to do with landscapes and maps.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
the interesting thing, which is again has to do with England, is that the main exhibit of this show is a manuscript, or a 15th century manuscript of the Odyssey, which is held by the British Library, and they gave me permission to reprint it on paper. And on top of that, I have drawn what is in the text in terms of landscape and travel. So it's a different, it's the Odyssey.
Could you go off screen share, Marcus, just so we can see your whole face, and then we'll talk. Thank you. Well, okay. I look forward to seeing it very much. And that'll be starting in January.
22nd of January, hopefully.
And where will that be exactly?
I will be in a small place belonging to the Benaki Museum, which is the former house of a Greek painter, Gikas.
Yes, I've been there. Yeah.
And they have a small exhibition space at the first floor, and that's where we'll show it.
Marcus, it's been absolutely wonderful to see your work and to talk. And
very much,
when we finish the recording, we can talk about you showing work in Shrewsbury.
Yes.
But it's been wonderful, Marcus. And as I said to all our viewers, do visit his website. And of course, if you can go to Greece and see the work, even better still.
Thank you very much, Aidan. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a real joy.